more favorably than those who insist on maintaining control over everything. Fear of mistakes and criticism. Perfectionism often impedes effectiveness. The fear of errors leads some to avoid delegating tasks. Statements like, "If I assign this to Harvey, he'll mess it up," reflect a perfectionist mindset detrimental to growth. Cultivating an environment where mistakes are seen as learning opportunities fosters effectiveness and innovation. Reverse delegation. Delegates don't want responsibility. In some workplaces, reverse delegation occurs, where delegated tasks are pushed back to the delegator. This behavior thrives in intolerant environments. Encouraging autonomy and decision-making is crucial. For instance, a mechanic named Joe habitually deferred decisions to his supervisor, fearing responsibility. Addressing such issues involves empowering individuals to take ownership of their delegated tasks. No one else has the experience or competence. Underestimating others' abilities is common. Delegating tasks offers opportunities for growth and skill development. Giving individuals responsibilities allows them to gain necessary experience and competence. Doing everything makes you feel indispensable. The desire to be indispensable often hinders effectiveness. No one is irreplaceable. Embracing reality rather than striving for indispensability benefits both individuals and organizations. We want admiration, respect, or pity. Some resist delegation to maintain an image of hard work and dedication. This ego-driven approach undermines productivity and fosters unhealthy work habits. We don't understand the situation. Sometimes, lack of information about a task leads to hesitation in delegating. Seeking clarity and understanding the task's requirements can guide effective delegation practices. Strategies for effective delegation. Consider the following strategies to improve delegation practices. Select the best person for the job. Effective delegation hinges on choosing the right individual or team. Cost doesn't always correlate with quality. Machiavelli's insight into the prince underscores this. Good soldiers, not just resources, ensure success. Similarly, in sports and business, consistently successful teams owe their achievements to skilled personnel choices. Provide adequate training and tools. Delegates need proper training and resources to succeed. Investing in their development enhances task performance and overall productivity. Communicate clearly. Clearly define delegated tasks, including expectations and parameters. Miscommunication leads to confusion and inefficiency. Understand different delegation styles, from minimal involvement to full autonomy, as outlined by management expert Ross Weber. Acknowledge contributions. Recognize and reward those who perform delegated tasks well. Acknowledgement fosters motivation and encourages future success. Empower others. Avoid assigning menial or trivial tasks. Meaningful responsibilities cultivate cooperation and engagement. For instance, educators should assign relevant tasks that foster collaboration rather than burdening students with unnecessary work. Effective delegation and the role of secretaries. 1. Make tasks worthy of time and effort. When assigning someone a task, make sure it is worthy of their time and effort. Just like you, they value their time and energy. Provide the necessary support to get the job done in the easiest way possible without sacrificing quality. This approach increases your chances of success as a delegator. 2. Put an end to reverse delegation. When you assign someone a task, ensure it doesn't come back to you like a boomerang. Tolerating reverse delegation means you aren't truly delegating. If someone tries to drop a problem back in your lap, tell them, "I gave you this job because I wanted to see how you would handle it." If they still wish to discuss it with you, ask them to think of several solutions, put them in writing, and choose what they believe is the best one. This will enhance their decision-making skills and reduce the time you spend consulting with them. Once they have formulated solutions, you have a basis for an effective discussion. 3. Delegate the right to be different and wrong. Just because someone doesn't do the job your way doesn't mean they are any less capable. We would find it odd if a coach insisted a star left-handed quarterback throw with his right hand just because the coach was right-handed. Similarly, mistakes are part of the learning process and should be expected and tolerated as long as people are willing to learn from them. It's better to have people discuss their successes and quietly tolerate intelligent mistakes. 4. Realize delegation doesn't free you from responsibility. The classic illustration of this concept is the sign on Harry Truman's desk saying, "The buck stops here." Even though you assign the job to someone else, you do not transfer your responsibility for ensuring it gets done. After World War II, this concept was applied in the war crimes trials. High-level leaders were tried, imprisoned, and executed for atrocities committed by subordinates, even if it couldn't be proven they had ordered them. Those with final authority are ultimately responsible. 5. Assign tasks by requesting rather than ordering. In a free society, everyone has a choice. Others can either do the job you want or refuse. We all like to think of ourselves as worthy of respect and courtesy. Consequently, how you assign tasks is often as important as what you assign. There's a big difference between, "Mary, can you wrap up the Hobart report this week?" and, "Mary, wrap up the Hobart report this week." Courtesy and respect are contagious. In delegating, a little tact goes a long way. 6. Specify conditions for satisfactory performance at the outset. Have you ever given someone a job only to remark later, "This isn't what I wanted at all"? This can usually be avoided by initially explaining what you want done, how you want it done, and when you want it done. It may also help to specify subgoals or request progress reports on long-term assignments. Explaining the task's importance, usefulness, and necessity can also motivate those who have to do it. 7. Follow up. As long as you are responsible for a task, ensure it's carried out. The final step in delegation is to check on the performance of the work. Habitually delegating without following up invites problems. Follow-up questions to ask are, who did the job? How was it done? Was the work satisfactory? And what can be done to do the job faster, easier, and better in the future? Skillful delegation can give you more time to devote to your important tasks, hobbies, or whatever, leading to a less hassled life and improved relationships. Such a small initial investment of time can give you a great payoff. How your secretary can help you work less and accomplish more. A discussion of delegation wouldn't be complete without touching on secretaries. If you talk to people who make things happen, be it in business, government, or elsewhere, they often attribute a large amount of their success to the effective use of secretaries and administrative assistants. Competent, trustworthy secretaries are worth their weight in gold. Unfortunately, many underestimate the true potential of secretaries, viewing them as mindless individuals who only type letters or file documents. This attitude wastes human talent. The role of a good secretary. 1. Organization. A good secretary can learn your principles of organization and ensure you stay organized. They can keep your desk clean and prioritize your to-do list. 2. Routine tasks. Routine correspondence and decision-making can be delegated to your secretary. This frees you to work on non-routine and non-recurring problems. 3. Appointment management. Your secretary can manage your schedule and act as a buffer, screening visitors and calls, allowing you to work uninterrupted on important tasks. 4. Mail screening. A well-informed secretary can reduce your reading time by screening your mail and highlighting items worthy of attention. 5. Goodwill ambassador. A personable secretary can serve as your ambassador of goodwill, reminding you to acknowledge subordinates and customers on special occasions. 6. Substantive assistance. An intelligent and informed secretary can assist in the substantive part of your work, providing ideas, gathering necessary information, and serving as a sounding board. Guidelines for secretarial effectiveness. 1. Hire the best. Get an alert, bright, educated person who is worthy of your time and trust. Consider hiring a talented, ambitious person and providing necessary training. 2. Team member. Your secretary is a key team member. Never underestimate the power of a good secretary. 3. Inform and involve. Keep your secretary informed of your goals, priorities, and aspirations. Ask for ideas and input. 4. Respect their time. Don't waste your secretary's time by making them wait while you search for documents or assign needless tasks. 5. Delegate authority. Give your secretary the authority to make decisions and solve problems. Start with small tasks and gradually increase complexity. 6. Support and recognize. Provide all the support, recognition, respect, and salary you can. A first-class secretary can significantly enhance your effectiveness. Chapter 10 Beyond Barriers. Mastering Open Communications. If only everyone talked the way we do in my household. I mean, if only everyone, talked, the way we do, right? It would be so much, easier. Understand, right? Robert? Chapter 10 Beyond Barriers. Mastering Open Communications. If only everyone talked the way we do in my household. I mean, if only everyone, talked, the way we do, right? It would be so much, easier. Understand, right? Robert Nordell. Communication is often the weakest link when working with others. In the past century, we've achieved superhuman technical advances in rapid and widespread communication. We live in a society where information bombards us continually. Yet despite this torrent of messages, our ability to convey what we truly mean seems to have stagnated. The endless capacity for people to misunderstand each other makes our jobs and lives unnecessarily challenging. Consider this hypothetical example of formal communication within an organization. A colonel issued this directive to the executive officer. Tomorrow evening at approximately 2000 hours, Halley's Comet will be visible in this area, an event which occurs only once every 75 years. Have the men fall out in the battalion area in fatigues, and I will explain this rare phenomenon to them. In case of rain, we will not be able to see anything, so assemble the men in the theater and I will show films of it. Executive officer to the company commander. By order of the colonel, tomorrow at 2000 hours, Halley's Comet will appear above the battalion area. If it rains, assemble the men in fatigues and march to the theater where this rare phenomenon, which occurs once every 75 years, will take place. Company commander to lieutenant. By order of the colonel, assemble in fatigues at 2000 hours tomorrow evening. The phenomenal Halley's Comet will appear in the theater. If it rains in the battalion area, the colonel will issue another order, something which occurs once every 75 years. Lieutenant to sergeant. Tomorrow at 2000 hours, the colonel will appear in the theater with Halley's Comet, something which happens every 75 years. If it rains, the colonel will order the comet into the battalion area. Sergeant to squad. When it rains tomorrow at 2000 hours, the phenomenal 75-year-old General Halley, accompanied by the colonel, will drive his comet through the battalion area in his fatigues. Miscommunications like the above happen every hour of every day in every type of organization imaginable. Whenever I share this example in seminars, many respond candidly with, "That sounds like where I work." The problem of communication breakdowns may never be completely solved, but it isn't entirely hopeless either. Most of us do little to improve our ability to understand and be understood because we simply take communication for granted. Most people assume themselves to be at least good communicators and blame others for not communicating well. What an illusion! With an understanding of some basic concepts of communication, we can begin to recognize common ways that faulty communication occurs. The first step toward resolving any problem is to recognize it. One fundamental concept is, as we perceive, so we communicate. Our ability to communicate is intertwined with our perceptions and thought processes. As Lister Sinclair noted, we start speaking as we think but end up thinking as we speak. No one can fully understand beyond their own experiences. Someone might say, "I know just how you feel," but the truth is no one can completely understand another's feelings because no two people have identical experiences. Your experiences, senses, and thinking are uniquely yours. This significant difference in experience and perception greatly hampers our ability to communicate. Our perceptions are also influenced by our needs. People tend to see what they want to see. As David Berlow said, "Seek and ye shall find, whether it is there or not." If you believe the person you are speaking to is hostile, friendly, dull, or any other trait, you will tend to perceive them that way. Poor children perceive a quarter as larger than affluent children do. When we meet someone we perceive as important, we overestimate their height. Therefore, our ability to accurately perceive reality and communicate it is greatly distorted by our needs. In addition to being limited by our experiences and perceptions, our ability to communicate is constrained by our capacity to encode or decode meanings into symbols. What we experience cannot be directly transmitted, it must be symbolically communicated. Every form of communication involves a symbolic process where something else stands for what we truly intend to convey. For example, someone buying a Rolls-Royce and parking it in their driveway symbolizes wealth. Another person frowning symbolizes displeasure. Saying, "I love you," symbolizes affection for someone else. As children, we might have learned the phrase, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me." This teaches us that words themselves are harmless symbols. But do we really react to words as mere symbols? Consider the case of a 26-year-old man who, as a guest at his father-in-law's farm for dinner, was served what he believed was lamb. After dinner, his father-in-law told him it was grilled dog. According to the Associated Press, upon hearing this, the young man proceeded to strangle 40 chickens, threatened to kill everyone in the house, cut the throats of 3 mules and 3 cows, break 1,200 eggs, and set the farmhouse and truck on fire. It wasn't consuming dog meat itself that triggered this rampage. It was the message conveyed that caused him to react so drastically. As S.I. Hayakawa pointed out, we live in 2 worlds: the world of first-hand experience, extensional world, and the world of verbal descriptions, intentional world. When we react to verbal descriptions as if they were reality, we often go astray. The intentional orientation. When we behave intentionally, we react to the verbal world as if it were the real world. For instance, if I blindfolded you and gave you cold spaghetti, claiming it was worms, you might become ill. However, once you realize it's just cold spaghetti, my words wouldn't matter as much. Behaving extensionally means checking our experiences against reality rather than blindly accepting verbal descriptions. Behaving intentionally can waste time and energy over imagined issues. Relying on symbolic maps without checking reality causes unnecessary grief. An example from an advertisement illustrates this. A man lived by the road, selling hot dogs without a radio or newspaper. He put up a sign and sold well. When his son warned of a depression, he reduced orders, stopped advertising, and sales plummeted. Words led to actions based on a misperception of reality. The one-word, one-definition fallacy. We assume words mean the same to others as they do to us. The 500 most common English words have over 14,000 dictionary definitions, causing meaning to often fail. For instance, a dry cleaner's sign offers prompt attention for dropped pants. A King Tut visitor's shock over King's organs led to merriment over pianos. The either-or trap. Language structure simplifies complex ideas as true-false or right-wrong. This leads to poor communication, missing nuances. Dictators, which Hunts, Sports, and Courts illustrate, and Bertrand Russell warns against final certainty. The "I've said it all" myth. Overconfident, people miss points in argument, e.g., Sachs's blind scholar's elephant. Humorists play on language flaws as drivers' excuses for collisions. Bad directions blamed. Confusing inferences with reality. Assuming, misinterpreting, act on it. Stop and consider it to live. Consequences, drawing conclusions, act. Unfortunately, the nature of our language doesn't necessarily force us to distinguish between statements of inference and statements of observation. All too often, we jump to erroneous conclusions based on vague or incomplete information. Alfred Korzybski, the father of general semantics, provided the following humorous tale of individuals who allowed their inferences to lead them to erroneous conclusions. In a railroad compartment, an American grandmother with her young and attractive granddaughter, a Romanian officer, and a Nazi officer were the only occupants. The train was passing through a dark tunnel, and all that was heard was a loud kiss and a vigorous slap. After the train emerged from the tunnel, nobody spoke, but the grandmother was saying to herself, "What a fine girl I have raised. She will take care of herself. I am proud of her." The granddaughter was saying to herself, "Well, grandmother is old enough not to mind a little kiss. Besides, the fellows are nice. I am surprised what a hard wallop grandmother has." The Nazi officer was meditating, "How clever those Romanians are. They steal a kiss and have the other fellow slapped." Once we pigeonhole someone or get pigeonholed, the evaluation, be it ever so false, tends to stick. William Haney calls such a practice hardening of the categories. All common categories have their particular images associated with them. Each of us, with our own personal biases, forms opinions of others based on stereotyping. We all laugh at Archie Bunker, but every man is, in some sense, at least equally biased. Our culture and educational system teach us to label and stereotype. Grouping people and things according to similarity can have positive value. However, being conscious only of similarities neglects the differences that exist in all of us. Everyone stereotypes, but no one likes to be stereotyped. Stop for a moment and write down the following things: your sex, your age, your race, your ethnic background, your religion, your education, your occupation, your marital status, your political affiliation, the region based on stereotyping. We all laugh at Archie Bunker, but every man is, in some sense, at least equally biased. Our culture and educational system teach us to label and stereotype. Grouping people and things according to similarity can have positive value. However, being conscious only of similarities neglects the differences that exist in all of us. Everyone stereotypes, but no one likes to be stereotyped. Stop for a moment and write down the following things: your sex, your age, your race, your ethnic background, your religion, your education, your occupation, your marital status, your political affiliation, the region of the country you come from, your height, and your weight. Take a moment to consider the stereotype labels that are attributed to those traits you have listed. Of course, many, if not all, of the stereotypic patterns don't apply to you. But you can believe that many people who know you believe the traits do indeed apply to you. To summarize, stereotyping, the unawareness of our inferences, the belief in and craving for total certainty, either-or thinking, the one-word one-meaning fallacy, and confusing symbols with the reality they represent are some of the common ways in which communication breaks down. Add to this the fact that most of us blame each other for communication failures, and it becomes obvious why misunderstandings are so prevalent. Strategies that will make you a better communicator. All of us are far from perfect communicators, but some of us are farther away from perfection than others. Even if you were a perfect communicator, whatever that might be, you would still find yourself beset with communication problems due to the fact that you would have to deal with all us imperfect communicators. Acknowledging and practicing the following guidelines will help make you a more effective communicator. Recognize the inadequacy of communication. By taking communication for granted, we only increase the chances of greater misunderstanding. Communication seems simple because we have been doing it longer than we can remember. However, doing it a long time and doing it well are not the same things. It's a complicated, symbolic, abstract process with an unlimited number of things that can go wrong, and usually do. As Emerson wrote, it is a luxury to be understood. Communication may appear inadequate, but what's our choice? For better or worse, it's all we've got. We simply have to be content with it while recognizing the fact that none of us will ever be totally understood. Get extensional in your thinking. Remember that words are only symbols for reality in much the same way that maps represent territories. Frequently, things are not what they appear to be. Classic examples of this are statements we hear today about the salaries of professional athletes. We are quoted the current salary of a highly paid baseball player, and someone remarks, "Gee whiz. Babe Ruth only made $80,000 a year in his heyday." Of course, when you take into account the income taxes today's player pays and deflate his salary to account for the shrinking of the dollar since Ruth's playing days, you find that Ruth actually had a great deal more purchasing power than today's stars. If you doubt the map, it always pays to check the territory. Such a practice can save you a great deal of time and energy. Listen and look for total meaning in someone's message. Don't just listen for words. They may not mean the same to you as they do to the other person. Look for gestures, expressions, the sender's posture, and tone of voice. Likewise, be conscious of these things when you are the sender. Remember that it's not what you say but how you say it that really communicates your feelings. Consider the source. Whenever evaluating a message, who said it is usually at least as important as what is said. The better you know your communicator, the more accurately you will be able to assess the message and his motives for sending it. That sounds like an obvious recommendation, but it's one that is all too often ignored. For example, a colleague may openly criticize your work when the actual problem is that he feels threatened that your potential success will make him look bad. The local computer or photocopy sales representative may tell you that you need their latest in hardware when your present machines have you drowning in clutter and information overload. Or your stockbroker may incessantly call you with hot tips. Why shouldn't he? His commission is based on transactions. It's a good rule of thumb to remember that people will tend to tell you what they want you to hear. And what they want you to hear isn't always in your own best interest. Tailor your message to your audience. Choose words, concepts, and ideas that they can relate to based on their background and knowledge. How well you do this is fundamental to getting your message across. Ask questions. Many of us are reluctant to ask questions of someone when we aren't sure what the person means. This is usually born out of our fear of appearing stupid. However, a lot of confusion can be nipped in the bud by simply asking someone to repeat or rephrase his statement. If you think you understand but want to be sure, paraphrase the message and let the sender verify that you do, in fact, understand his point. If someone refuses to tolerate intelligent questions, he may not be terribly certain of what he is saying. Which brings us to our next recommendation. Chapter 11. Dynamic Duos, the Art of Working Hand in Hand. Know what you're talking about. The ability of people to pass comments, ideas, and judgments on things that they are ignorant of or don't have the slightest understanding of abounds daily. Someone participating in a national poll was recently asked, "What do you think about cyclamates?" Her response was, "I think any two cyclamates who live together should get married." You can save yourself and others a lot of future headaches by taking the time to get your facts straight and know something about what you are communicating about. Be specific. Don't beat around the bush by speaking in vague generalities. If you make a general statement, have something specific to illustrate your point. Don't say, "Foghorn is doing a lousy job as division sales manager." Instead, say, "Foghorn's department has had high turnover, high absenteeism, and a poor track record on sales ever since he took over last year," and have the facts to back it up. Communicate in simple, everyday language. The way we tend to assess someone's intelligence on the basis of the number of big words he uses never ceases to amaze me. To be sure, many professional and technical terms are work-savers that allow professionals to communicate more rapidly with each other. However, a great deal of what we read in medical, legal, technical, and academic documents is little more than the old professional snow job game. If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit. Have you ever tried to read your insurance policies, federal laws that govern you, or the act of sale for your house? Good luck. The purpose of a great deal of the jargon is to protect the future of experts rather than the consumer. Here's something you can have fun with. It's called the Systematic Buzz Phrase Projector and has been around for some time. It is believed to have originated in the Royal Canadian Air Force and consists of the following 3 columns of buzzwords: integrated, management, options, total organizational, flexibility, systematized, monitored, capability, parallel, reciprocal, mobility, functional, digital programming, responsive, logic, concept, optical, transitional, time phase, synchronized, compatible, balanced, incremental, hardware, contingency, herd generation, projection. With these, you're equipped to formulate your own buzzwords, designed to impress and confuse all you know. Just think of 3 digits at random, say 5, 8, 4, look up the corresponding buzzwords and presto. You now have responsive third-generation programming. Eat your heart out, IBM. The only problem with such communication is that it is mostly non-communication, dealing with disruptive personalities. At work, the moralist is easy to identify. He's the one who tells you how to behave, how to dress, how to keep your desk, whom to associate with both on and off the job, and how to do your job. He is absolutely convinced about the righteousness of his convictions, so the idea of live and let live is totally off his map. Most intelligent people are insulted by moralists. The subtle put-down is, "You aren't capable of making your own decisions, so I will make them for you. And if you don't follow my absolutely flawless advice, shame on you." The martyr. Martyrs manipulate others by setting themselves up as sacrificial lambs. Like the moralist, the martyr's primary weapon is guilt. The difference is that the moralist tells you to feel guilty, whereas the martyr wields guilt covertly. By word or deed, the martyr lets you know that he has sacrificed his own needs for your benefit and that you are a selfish, inconsiderate slob if you won't do what he wants you to do. As a hypothetical example of martyrdom in action, let's assume that you and I meet in a bookstore where you happen to be looking at this book and are trying to decide whether or not to buy it. After looking it over, you decide you would rather spend your money elsewhere and put the book back on the shelf. Assuming the role of a martyr, I would look terribly downtrodden and say to you, "That's okay, you don't have to buy it. Forget that I sacrificed the prime of my life to help people like you. Forget my poor eyesight that resulted from poring over the manuscript. You just don't understand how tough it is to write a book. Maybe someday when you write a book of your own, you'll know the agony of it all. Then you'll know how it feels to get rejections from publishers and flack from editors. Go ahead and put the book down. Forget about me." Of course, in choosing to play the role of a martyr, I left out a few details. First, I wrote the book because I wanted to. Second, I had a ball writing it. And third, it's a profit-making venture on the part of the publisher and myself. Despite their cries of sacrifice, martyrs are the most selfish persons of all. Few of us can enjoy the benefits of someone else's self-denial. Of course, the martyr isn't really sacrificing. He's getting some sort of perverse pleasure from playing the sacrificial lamb game with you. Once you are aware of his game, you tend to ignore him and his cries of agony. Why shouldn't you? To pay attention to him is a needless waste of your time. The perfectionist. Perfectionism and its problems were discussed earlier. Have you ever known anyone who said, "I'm a perfectionist in everything I do"? Many of us believe that such a philosophy is the key to effective living, but such is not the case. More often than not, the perfectionist wastes a great deal of his time and energy, and, if you aren't careful, he will waste yours too. If you make the mistake of working with a perfectionist, you will frequently find yourself spending 90% of your time to get a 1% increase in results. I have 3 friends who spent over a year writing a 3,000-word article. That's a rate of about 3 words per person per day. One of them, a self-proclaimed perfectionist, kept rewriting, reviewing, and critiquing the article and insisting his co-authors do the same. Despite all of their efforts at perfection, the article has yet to be published and has been rejected on several occasions. Many people who fancy themselves as perfectionists are wheel spinners who really accomplish little or nothing. As Nicholas Chamfort said, bachelors' wives and old maids' children are always perfect. The trivia generator. The trivia generator keeps himself busy by keeping everyone else busy. In fact, busy work for you and himself is his only goal. He is the classic victim of the activity means productivity myth. No one has ever bothered to tell him that jumping around and splashing in the water doesn't mean you're swimming. It's tough enough to be effective without the needless harassment of a make-work artist. Consequently, those who create superfluous tasks are very easy to dislike and can create a great deal of needless conflict. The short fuse. The short fuse is the guy who reacts excessively and too quickly without stopping to reflect on a situation that he is confronted with. As a result, he often complicates problems or creates unnecessary conflicts. To the short fuse, every new problem is one of paramount urgency and importance. He is very high-strung, intense, and quick to lose his temper. Because he lacks perspective, the short fuse spends most of his time solving unnecessary problems that he creates for himself and everyone else. A department manager named Ben created a great deal of havoc with his steno pool. He decided one day that the stenos were taking 5 minutes too many on their coffee breaks and were wasting too much time talking with each other. He started spot-checking coffee breaks and severely reprimanded several stenos for what he termed excessive chatter. As a result, the stenographers got together and formed a work slowdown. They were very precise about their coffee breaks, cut the conversation to a minimum, and spent 50% of their time looking busy. Morale in the steno pool declined, absenteeism increased, and several stenos found jobs elsewhere. A clerical bottleneck was created, and it was Ben's responsibility to solve it. He couldn't, and he was replaced. The bragger. Muhammad Ali has made a fortune by marketing himself to the public as a bragger. However, unless you want people to pay money to see you get your face reshaped, such a strategy will not likely work for you. "Mine is better than yours" is the motto of the bragger, and he takes pains to remind you of it at every opportunity. With absolutely no encouragement, he will tell you about his new home, his expensive car, his great job, or all the women who are after him. In truth, most braggers believe that theirs isn't as good as yours, so they attempt to impress you by exaggerating their success. The put-down artist. A special case of put-down artistry is putting oneself down, the kick-me player. He will tell you about how stupid or irresponsible he is and then follow through with inaction to back up his statements. Consequently, he gets kicked out of a job, out of school, or out of his marriage. More frequently, however, the put-down artist aims his arrows of destruction at you and others. If you don't take pains to ignore these guys, they can waste a lot of your time and energy in needless bickering. The con man. Although they come in various shapes and sizes, all con men show one thing: a lack of integrity. They take great pains to deceive others for their own personal benefit. A guy who doesn't come off straight is most easily recognized by his ability to consistently say one thing and do another. Your boss tells you he always likes to promote from within but fills vacant positions with outsiders. Your colleague tells you that nothing of consequence is on the agenda of the budget committee's meeting and there is no need to attend. Later you find they killed off your pet project so he could get the funding for his. Hypocrisy is the modus operandi of the con man. Dealing with a con artist can be very tricky and time-consuming, especially when you don't recognize him as such. Conclusion. There you have the disruptive dozen. To be sure, you will always be plagued by them to some degree. However, by controlling your own behavior, you can ensure that the disruptive dozen will have a minimum impact on your own effectiveness. Coping with an abrasive personality is best handled by refusing to become one. Guidelines for resolving and avoiding conflict situations. 1. Make the effort to be an effective communicator. More often than not, conflicts are created because the parties involved don't understand each other's true meaning. Many of the recommendations in the preceding chapter will help prevent unnecessary conflicts by ensuring good communication. 2. Replace defensiveness with openness. If you stop and think about it, all of the disruptive dozen are basically defensive personalities. People behave in these fashions when they feel threatened. Consequently, the best way to discourage such behavior is to appear or behave in a non-threatening manner. The more receptive and open you are to the opinions and feelings of others, the less inclined they will be to go on the defensive. 3. Present necessary criticism in a spirit of kindness, helpfulness, and tact. On occasion, you will be faced with the necessity of pointing out mistakes or constructively critiquing the work or behavior of someone else. If improperly handled, this can be another fertile ground for needless conflict. Here are some ideas aimed at minimizing the chances of such a needless conflict. Choose a proper time and place, preferably a private one. Never publicly criticize or ridicule someone. You will only put them on the defensive, and defensive people don't listen. Start by paying the person a sincere compliment for something positive they have done. If you give only criticism, they will feel unappreciated and will likely be reluctant to pay attention to what you have to say. Focus on the behavior that needs correcting, not on the person. To the extent that you can indirectly call attention to the problem, do so. Be specific when discussing the problem. Telling Jack that his report is all. Chapter 12. Summing up. Are you now working smart? Queer thing, but we think every other man's job is easier than our own. And the better he does it, the easier it looks.
Eden Philpotts.
The purpose of this book has been to give you some simple, practical techniques for making the most of your time and energy. Those who work smart are not loafers looking for the easy way out. Rather, they are people who make the most of their lives and thus create greater personal satisfaction for themselves and those they come into contact with. They are effective people. These individuals possess no grand and glorious abilities that set them apart from the rest of humankind. They simply realize that the application of a few powerful ideas makes for an easier, more satisfying, and productive life. In this final chapter, I would like to summarize some of the major ingredients necessary to increase your effectiveness. Much of this review is in the form of a series of questions. I hope you will frequently refer to this chapter, especially if you find your effectiveness is less than satisfactory. Do you focus on results? Effective people know it's more important to do the right job than to do the job right. Are you willing to invest the work to get what you want out of life? Sometimes effectiveness means investing time and effort in projects whose rewards are in the distant future. However, effective people never underestimate the importance of enjoying today. While they are future-oriented, they also have the common sense to realize that there is no inherent incompatibility between enjoying today and building for a better tomorrow. The two ideas are viewed as complementary. Have you searched your brain for any work tapes you may be playing? Ernest Hemingway once remarked, "The most essential gift for a good writer is a built-in, shock-proof shit detector." It's also a necessary talent for those who want to avoid frustration and fatigue. Many of the dogmatic messages we have been taught about work are partial truths at best. When someone successful tells you how hard they worked, realize that one seldom asks a failure how hard they worked. Sweat, activity, efficiency, hours, and pressure are not linked to accomplishment in a predictable fashion. Every job is unique and will require various combinations of blood, sweat, tears, time, and intelligence to be successfully completed. Remember that effectiveness is more of an art than a science, and constantly practice refining your skills. Have you set your own goals and accepted total responsibility for achieving them? Goals are necessary for your happiness as well as being the vehicle that enables you to concentrate your time and energy most effectively. Set goals that are specific, challenging, realistic, and measurable. Be sure your goals are compatible with each other and give each one a deadline. Put your goals in writing, but consider them subject to revision and change. When you set goals, set them on a lifetime, intermediate, and daily basis. After setting goals, rank them in order of importance and tackle the top priority projects first. Remember the 80-20 rule. 80% of your effectiveness comes from achieving 20% of your goals. Do you try to solve problems in a simple, rational way? Effective people appear to live a carefree, charmed existence, but the fact is that they, like everyone else, encounter their share of life's problems. The difference between these people and others is that effective people realize that the number and severity of problems they have aren't as important as the way in which they are handled. They realize that becoming emotionally involved in a problem only lessens the chances of finding a satisfactory solution. Do you distinguish between urgent problems and important ones? The tyranny of the urgent can wreck your effectiveness if allowed to reign unchecked. Remember, urgent things are seldom important, and important things are seldom urgent. Have you accounted for your use of time? Most time use is habitual, and we don't know how we spend our time until we try to keep track of it. Keeping a time log periodically can help us uncover and eliminate unproductive habits. Do you keep a loose schedule? A good rule of thumb is never to schedule more than 50% of your day. Murphy's Law can play havoc with tight schedules. Expect the unexpected. Schedule the most important tasks for prime time, the time when you work your best. Also, set aside a period each day for reflecting on who you are and what your goals are. Look for ways to make multiple uses of time that has already been committed. Do you know what not to do? Effectiveness doesn't result from doing more. It's the product of doing less better. The inability to say no is a great effectiveness killer. When you find it necessary to say no, do it promptly and politely to avoid raising unnecessary expectations. Don't feel you have to have a reason every time you refuse someone's request, but provide one if you deem it appropriate. Before tackling a job, do you ask yourself, is this the best use of my time and energy? If the answer is yes, equip yourself with the proper tools and complete the task. If the answer is no, get someone else to do the job or don't do it. Are you a workaholic? Accept the fact that time away from the job is a necessary stimulus to greater creativity, satisfaction, and effectiveness on the job. Do you have a sound self-image? Do you know who you are? Recognize and accept your limitations and build on your strengths. You're better than you think. Accept yourself unconditionally. It's the key to peace of mind, and a peaceful mind is a more effective one. The majority of people strive to improve their image in the eyes of others, but the effective individual realizes that other-directedness isn't nearly as important as inner-directedness. The very essence of an effective person is doing things that make them feel good about themselves. Do you put your own needs first? You can't help the poor by becoming one of them. Effective people are positively selfish. They refuse to be martyrs or self-sacrificers and give of themselves only when they have something meaningful to give. As a result, their help tends to be more abundant, effective, and oriented toward helping others to help themselves. Do you accept the responsibility for your own feelings? Do you believe that you, like everyone else, make your own sunshine? Have you said goodbye to the time and energy-robbing emotions of guilt and worry? When you feel anger, have you learned to use it positively to move you toward your goals? An antidote to excessive anger is a well-developed sense of humor. Take your work seriously, but not yourself. When things get hectic, back off, look at things in perspective, and learn to laugh at yourself. 99% of the time, things seem more important in the present than they actually are. Do you build on your strengths? If you perform work that allows you to build on your strengths, you will perform with relative ease. Take a relaxed approach toward your work. Remember that how well you work is far more important than how hard you work. Are you aware that being a perfectionist can cripple effectiveness? Somerset Maugham wrote, "Only a mediocre person is always at his best." Striving for perfection usually costs us more time than the increased benefits justify. Sometimes perfection is essential, and on those occasions, do your best to deliver it. However, most of the time, it isn't necessary and wastes time that could be better spent elsewhere. Do you have the courage to act and commit yourself to calculated risk-taking? As William Lyon Phelps wrote, the fear of life is the favorite disease of the 20th century. The courage to take calculated risks is essential. The only other alternative is a wasted life of inaction, immobilization, and servitude to your fears. Better to feel sorry for the things you've done than to waste your life regretting missed opportunities. Our culture is very security-oriented, and caution is the norm. However, to make the most of your life, you must accept the fact that the only real security is that which comes from within. Despite what you have been told by your parents, teachers, spouse, clergyman, Uncle Sam, employer, or insurance companies, no one ever gives anyone security. Life is a gamble from the cradle to the grave, and the refusal to take risks makes for a life of mediocrity at best. Measure success in terms of what you gain, not what you lose. You will have your share of adversities, but these are experiences to learn from and not final acts. Mike Todd once remarked, "I've been broke many times, but I've never been poor." 80% of achievement is having the guts to try. Clementine Paddleford said, "Never grow a wishbone, daughter, where your backbone ought to be." Have you bid farewell to procrastination? All of us will always be procrastinators to some degree. The important thing is to recognize it as a useless burden that must be minimized if you want to get things done with less effort. Are you a frequent and skillful delegator? Smart workers aren't plagued by do-it-yourself-itis. They concentrate their time and energy on performing the important tasks that only they can do. Anything that can be delegated is delegated. Realize that there are many irrational temptations to avoid delegating and work to overcome them. Accept the fact that others will make mistakes and do the job differently. Work at developing your delegating skills. It's quite an art. Is your secretary given responsible, challenging assignments in addition to routine clerical tasks? An intelligent, competent secretary is a priceless aid to effectiveness. Get a good one and seek to develop their greatest potential. Many successful executives attribute much of their rise and fortune to the aid of competent and loyal secretaries who help them climb the ladder of success. Keep them informed and reward their effectiveness with the support, salary, and recognition they deserve. Do you make a conscious effort to improve your ability to communicate? All too often, the spoken, printed, or written word is woefully inadequate, but it is all that we have. Keep in mind that all communication is a symbolic process that is interwoven with our thought process. We tend to start out speaking as we think, but usually end up thinking as we speak. When communicating with others, look for total meaning and be aware of the common types of communication breakdowns. Consider the source as much as the message. If you don't understand someone, don't be embarrassed to ask questions. Communicate your thoughts in specific, simple, everyday language. Do you attempt to work with people rather than against them? Bertrand Russell once stated, "The only thing that will redeem mankind is cooperation." Some conflicts are necessary, but most are needless wastes of time caused by poor communication. Effective people resolve conflicts in a friendly, non-threatening manner. They are slow to criticize others and remain cool and unthreatened in the face of criticism. Their inner security and ability to focus on the important things in life provide them with the ability to avoid, resolve, and tolerate needless conflicts. Smart workers make life pleasant for themselves and those around them. They are perennial optimists in both word and deed. Because they like themselves, they find it easy to tolerate, accept, and love the world and those around them. Have you taken steps to minimize interruptions? All of us are subject to meetings, visitors, and telephone calls which can derail our best-laid plans if we allow them to. Avoid meetings like the plague. Don't be a habitual joiner. If you have to call a meeting, be sure it's a necessary one with a specific purpose and agenda. Time spent planning meetings and focusing on goals during the meeting can greatly reduce their time and cost. Shield yourself from drop-in visitors. Schedule visiting hours and see drop-in visitors only in cases of emergency. Arrange appointments for necessary visitors and have others screened. Use the telephone intelligently to save time rather than waste it. Know who your frequent callers are. Receive and make telephone calls at specified times. When you wish to work uninterrupted, have your calls taken by your secretary, an answering service, or a telephone answering machine. Get yourself a hideaway for serious, lengthy periods of uninterrupted work. Choose a quiet spot and let your whereabouts be known only to a privileged few. Are you controlling and reducing your paperwork or wallowing in it? Paper is here to stay, but you don't have to let it clutter your life and smother your goals. If in doubt, throw it out. Never have it on its way. Never write when a telephone call or face-to-face contact will suffice. Paper is money. When you have to write, do it with clarity, simplicity, and naturalness. The key to being an effective reader is not to read faster but more selectively. Knowing what not to read is far more important than how rapidly you read. Do you enjoy your work? Above all, remember what Senator Hubert Humphrey said, "Life is not to be endured but to be enjoyed." A life of satisfaction and happiness is what we all seek. However, we must have the good sense to realize that happiness doesn't result from inaction but rather from creative absorption. Effective people have an intelligent type of persistence. They realize that most of us waste our time and energy by abandoning our goals too soon. Once these people attach themselves to a dream, they hang on for the ride and enjoy every minute of it. And they also realize, as an anonymous author wrote, no age or time of life, no position or circumstance has a monopoly on success. Any age is the right age to start doing. Working smart isn't a fantasy, but a reality within the grasp of all who choose to reach for it. The end of this book can mark the beginning for you, the beginning of a happier and more productive life through better use of your time and energy. I wish you every success.